His hand clutched the back of my thigh with such intensity that it took my breath away, a gasp escaping my lips as he entered me slowly yet firmly. I bit my lip to stifle a sound, savoring the subtle taste of blood, feeling the intense pressure of him pushing me beyond my limits. We found ourselves in the cramped hallway, adjacent to the laundry room, with the kitchen door slightly ajar. The fridge emitted a low hum, while the old clock on the wall ticked softly, each sound magnified by the anxiety that someone, anyone, might stroll by and catch a glimpse of our actions. I pressed my hand against the washer, the chill of the metal steadying me as my knees wavered beneath me. His breath brushed against my neck, warm and uneven, each deliberate thrust punctuated by a ragged exhale. "I am unable to do that." "Slow down," he whispered, his voice rough, fingers tightening as they pressed into my skin. My lips parted, yet silence enveloped me. The heavy presence of him bore down, my entire being coiling with tension, quivering, caught in a fierce struggle between the urge to retreat and the desperate desire for more. I pressed my teeth into my lip, eyes tightly closed, battling the warmth that unfurled deep within me, the guilt coiling around each sharp inhale I drew. I never thought I would find myself on this side of the line. I never imagined I would be the woman gripping the edge of a washing machine, while someone I was never meant to gaze at in that manner, pressed in so deeply that I found it hard to breathe. He was never meant to be desired by me. He was half my age, just 26, a chance encounter who had woven himself into my life before I even noticed the depth of it all. I am 39 years old, a devoted mother, and a loving wife. I manage the household, take care of the bills, and keep track of birthdays and doctor's appointments in my mind, allowing my husband to focus solely on his work. I believed I had shielded myself from such errors, from yearning for something forever out of reach. Yet, as he shut the door and drew near, the warmth radiating from his skin enveloped me, and in that instant, I ceased to be the person I once knew. What actions would you take if the individual you were meant to safeguard became the one you secretly yearned for? He ventured further, a deep groan escaping him that sent a shiver down my spine. The tears threatened to spill from the corners of my eyes, and the weight of guilt pressed heavily in my chest, making it feel as though I might suffocate under its burden. Apologies escaped his lips, a rough whisper as his forehead rested against my shoulder. I chose not to respond. I chose not to push him away. I allowed it to unfold. If you have ever carried a hidden truth that caused both pain and longing within you, this narrative may resonate deeply, perhaps more than you wish it would. We would greatly appreciate your support by liking and subscribing. The more you observe, the more narratives like this will uncover others who are concealing the same reality. That night, sleep eluded me. I reclined in bed beside my husband, attuned to the gentle rhythm of his snores resonating in his chest, my gaze fixed on the ceiling fans lazily rotating above me. Each time I shut my eyes, the hallway came alive in my mind, the light cascading over the linoleum floor, his hands quivering as they held my thigh, and the choice I made not to pull away. The guilt churned within me, a corrosive force eating away at my insides. Yet beneath it all, coiled so tightly that it sent shivers across my skin, was the memory of his warmth pressed against me, the primal urgency in his voice, and the way it stirred emotions within me that had long been dormant. For the majority of my adult years, I've dedicated myself to the care of others. My husband puts in long hours at work. I once believed that was meant for us, for the home, the children, the future we had created together. At times, I wonder if it would be simpler for him to completely avoid looking my way. We do not engage in conflict. We refrain from physical contact. We navigate the spaces of our home as courteous acquaintances, exchanging the appropriate phrases, never allowing our voices to rise. Yet, in the stillness of the night, when I extend my hand towards him, he shifts away in his slumber, oblivious to my longing. I convinced myself it was sufficient, that solitude was merely a facet of existence, something to be swallowed and overcome because others rely on you to forge ahead. Then he entered our world. He assisted with the garage renovation, a friend's son in need of the job, arriving punctually each day with a timid smile and reliable hands. He had always been courteous, consistently volunteering to lift the heavy boxes, to repair the jammed drawer in the kitchen, and to tidy up his messes so that I wouldn't need to. Initially, he went unnoticed by me. My days were consumed with a whirlwind of appointments, errands, and the relentless cycle of bills and chores. Yet, he continued to appear, silent and respectful, his gaze meeting mine in a manner that made me feel acknowledged, despite my attempts to overlook it. He inquired about how my day went. He observed when I was weary. He regarded me with a tenderness that sent a flutter through my stomach, reminiscent of feelings I hadn't experienced since my youth. I reassured myself it was innocuous, that I had matured, that I possessed wisdom, that his actions were merely gestures of kindness. Yet, the way he lingered in the doorway as I bent to retrieve something, the way he brushed past me in the tight hallway, the way his voice dropped to a whisper when he uttered my name, it ignited a feeling within me that I struggled to suppress. One afternoon, he lingered longer to assist with the dripping pipe beneath the sink. The house lay in stillness, broken only by the rhythmic drip of water and the soft hum of the fridge as my husband toiled away late into the night. He knelt before me, his shirt lifting slightly to reveal the defined line of muscle along his lower back, the soft blush of skin peeking out where his jeans dipped low. I ought to have turned my gaze, yet I remained fixed in place. As he turned to face me, his hands still glistening with moisture, he reached up to gently sweep a wayward strand of hair from my cheek. In that moment, I sensed a profound change within me, a fissure forming in the meticulously constructed barrier I had maintained for so long. There was a part of me that desired it to unfold, even if I couldn't acknowledge it at the time. Following that day in the hallway, I promised myself it would never occur again. I promised myself I would be stronger, that I would put an end to it before it spiraled into something more troubling. Yet, with each arrival, each gentle creak of the back door, and every utterance of my name in that low, captivating tone, my determination faltered just a bit more. The tiniest details were what ultimately unraveled me. The way he stood just a bit too close when passing me a tool, a cup of coffee, or a scrap of paper filled with his hasty notes, the fleeting touch of his fingers against mine that lingered a moment too long, the way he gazed at me when he believed I was distracted, as if he had something to say but held back. He began assisting with minor repairs around the house, lingering longer each time, asserting that the task was more extensive than he had anticipated. Initially, I convinced myself it was simply practical. My husband toiled late most evenings, hardly acknowledging the home as he returned, too weary to perceive the constant presence of another man occupying the voids left by his absence. Yet, as time stretched on, an unease began to creep in, a growing anxiety about the instant he would depart. I could almost feel the silence enveloping the house once the door clicked shut, and there I stood in the kitchen, gripping the counter, my arms pressed firmly against my sides to stave off the tremors that threatened to betray my composure. One evening after dinner, I discovered him in the garage, meticulously sorting through boxes. My husband dozed off on the couch, the TV casting a soft, flickering glow. I lingered in the doorway, wrapping my arms around myself, searching for words that wouldn't unravel me. He glanced up, cleaning his hands on a rag, his gaze skimming over me in the soft glow of the dim light. "You don't need to observe my process," he murmured gently. I deceived, shifting nervously from one foot to the other. I simply required a moment. He placed the rag down, moving in closer, so near that I could catch the scent of sweat and sawdust lingering on his shirt. It seems as though you're constantly holding your breath, he whispered. I'm not sure what you mean, I replied, though my voice felt frail, lacking strength. His hand twitched at his side, as if yearning to reach out to me, yet he was battling the impulse. There's no need for pretense around me, he whispered. Refrain from doing that. I murmured, my voice trembling. It's beyond my control, he exhaled. Neither of us stirred. The soft, persistent drone of the refrigerator in the adjacent room resonated like a thunderous roar. The following morning, I steered clear of him, immersing myself in errands and phone calls, deliberately overlooking the gentle knock at the back door when he arrived. That night, I found myself wide awake, reflecting on how his breath had caught when our eyes met, and how his voice trembled as he softly uttered my name. A few days later, I found myself once more in the kitchen, wiping down the counters, merely to occupy my hands. He entered unannounced, his hair still wet from the rain, his eyes heavy with fatigue. You shouldn't be here, I whispered, gripping the dish towel tightly, my knuckles turning pale with the strain. I just couldn't resist, he confessed. His voice trembled slightly, as if he despised himself for acknowledging the reality of it. He moved in, just within reach, and I could sense the warmth radiating from his skin, the hitch in his breath palpable in the air between us. Don't, I whispered once more, yet I remained still. His hand grazed mine, deliberate and gentle, as if seeking my consent. I released a gentle sigh, tears threatening to spill from my eyes. You occupy my thoughts endlessly, he murmured. Text, I implored, my words trailing off before I could complete my thought. He leaned in, his lips grazing my temple, his breath warm against my skin. Tell me to leave, he murmured, his voice gravelly. However, I remained silent. Later, as I lay in bed next to my husband, I sensed a profound division within myself. A part of me yearned to rush forward and reveal all, to plead with someone to pull me from the flames before I consumed us all in the blaze. The other part longed for his return, to feel his touch once more, to draw me deeper into an irresistible pull I couldn't resist. I clung to the guilt, allowing it to submerge the desire within me. Yet with each passing day, distinguishing between the two became increasingly challenging. It occurred on a Friday afternoon, as the sky shifted to the hue of faded bruises, dense clouds looming so low that it seemed as if the entire world was on the verge of shattering. I devoted the morning to cleaning, scrubbing the kitchen counters until my hands felt raw, attempting to distract myself from the persistent ache in my chest. The rain began gently, a delicate whisper against the glass. I believed I was by myself, until the back door began to creak open, slowly and cautiously. My breath hitched in my throat before he even crossed the threshold. I warned you to stay away, I murmured, gripping the edge of the sink so tightly that my knuckles turned pale. He closed the door softly, his damp hair curling at the edges, his shirt clinging to his chest. I made an effort, his voice emerged, gritty and strained. I truly gave it my all. I shook my head, yet I remained still. I was unable to. With 3 purposeful strides, he traversed the room, the sound of his boots squeaking against the linoleum echoing in the stillness. He halted mere inches from me, so near that I could sense the warmth radiating from his skin, the palpable quiver of his hands as they extended toward me. Refrain, I murmured, my voice faltering at the conclusion. Tell me to stop, he murmured, his forehead pressed against mine, his breath trembling. Go ahead and say you don't desire this. I parted my lips. Silence enveloped the moment. He pressed his lips against mine with fervor, his hands exploring beneath my shirt, their roughness contrasting with the delicate softness of my ribs. A soft, Fractured sound escaped my lips as I gripped the counter behind me, feeling his body press me back, pinning me against the chill of the tile. I ought not to. I inhaled deeply, my fingers tracing along his arms, claws pressing into the wet fabric of his shirt. He whispered, his lips grazing my jaw, filled with heat and urgency. I understand, truly. With a swift movement, he hoisted me onto the counter, the chill of the surface pressing sharply against the backs of my thighs. The rain pounded relentlessly against the window, the kitchen resonating with the cacophony of water and our breath, ragged and uneven. As he leaned into me, I could sense his presence, solid and warm, seeping through the material of his jeans. I bit my lip, suppressing a whimper, my entire body tensing as he moved closer, the firm outline of him pressing against the delicate fabric separating us. Please, I whispered, uncertain whether I was pleading for him to halt or to continue. He held my hips with a fierce intensity, a promise of bruises to come, his breath escaping in unsteady gasps. I am unable to do that. He gasped for breath, his voice strained as he urged, slow down. He clumsily worked at my jeans, lowering them slightly, his hands shaking as they explored the contours of my hips, my thighs, every part of me he had never been permitted to caress until this moment. A gentle sound escaped my lips as he discovered me, his hands both calloused and tender, his lips pressing against my neck, warm, moist, and filled with urgency. As he entered, slowly and with care, my breath hitched in my chest. I pressed my lips together with such force that the metallic taste of blood filled my mouth, while tears cascaded down my face as he plunged deeper, a low groan escaping his lips and brushing against my ear. Oh, the depth of your emotions. He began, yet the words disintegrated, consumed by a strangled sound. I grasped his shoulders tightly, my nails pressing into his skin, as the rain pelted against the window, blending with the soft, fractured sounds that escaped from us both. Each push threatened to tear me apart, the guilt and the need intertwining so tightly that I struggled to catch my breath. Apologies slipped from his lips, a soft murmur, yet his actions remained unchanged. I felt a sharp intake of breath, my head tilting back, my throat bared as he pressed his lips to the delicate curve just above my collarbone. The space seemed cramped and stifling, as if the very walls might cave in on us should anyone catch a glimpse of our actions. Each time he pressed further, soft, desperate sounds escaped my throat, a silent plea echoing in the air. As it came to an end, he embraced me, our bodies shaking, while the rain's melody filled the silence that lingered between our breaths. I am unable to. Stop, he whispered, his voice trembling. I couldn't either. Once he departed that day, I lingered in the kitchen for what seemed like an eternity, the rain relentlessly pounding against the windows, the frigid draft creeping beneath the door, and sending a shiver through my very core. I encircled myself with my arms, struggling to inhale, whispering to my inner self that it was finished, that I would not allow it to occur once more. Yet the pain lingered on. It nestled deep within my chest, a weighty and piercing sensation, pushing against my ribs, making me feel as though I might shatter. That night I prepared dinner as if nothing had transpired. I arranged the table, filled the glasses, and smiled as my husband cracked a casual joke about the neighbor's incessantly barking dog. I nodded and murmured at the appropriate moments, mindful to keep my hands steady as I handed him the salt. Yet with every blink, I was reminded of his gaze, the rain-drenched kitchen surrounding us, the primal desire reflected in his eyes, and the way he uttered my name as if it were the sole word in his vocabulary. I remained awake for hours that night, attuned to the steady cadence of my husband's breath. As I drifted into slumber, visions of him enveloped me, the the warmth of his hands, the coarse whisper of his breath brushing against my ear, the fractured cadence of his voice as he murmured, "I can't stop." This morning, a message awaited me on my phone. "I can't stop thinking about you. I regret to inform you that I am unable to do that." I placed the phone face down on the counter, my chest constricted, my fingers shaking so intensely that I almost let my mug slip from my grasp. He continued to stop by, each time armed with a new excuse, a loose hinge, a crack in the drywall, or an inquiry about the garage project. I promised myself I wouldn't allow him to get close again, that I would be resilient and put a stop to it before it escalated into something more troubling. Yet, with each entry he made into the house, the atmosphere shifted. The world seemed to shrink to the distance separating us, the gentle touch of his shoulder brushing against mine in the hallway, the warmth of his fingers lingering as he passed me a tool, the gravelly tone of his voice. See, when he uttered my name. He began to leave notes carefully tucked away in the drawer where I stored the scissors, slipped beneath the clutter of junk mail on the counter, and concealed within the folds of a freshly laundered dish towel. Your presence lingers in my thoughts, an unquenchable desire that I cannot shake off. Share with me that you don't experience this as well. If you wish for me to go, I shall do so. However, I have no desire to do so. I ripped them apart. I discarded them. Yet, I found myself unable to tear my eyes away, gripping the paper so fiercely that it crumpled beneath my touch, my breath trembling with each word. As I struggled against the urge that gripped me each time I laid eyes on his handwriting. At times, I would glimpse my reflection in the shadowy window during the night, the faint outline of my face, the vacant expression in my eyes, and I found myself unrecognizable. Every sound made me jump. With each creak of the door and every buzz of the phone, my heart pounded violently against my ribs, gripped by fear at the thought of it being him, and equally terrified if it wasn't. We discovered fleeting moments of solitude, hidden nooks within the gentle murmur of the home. He would glide by me in the corridor, his hand grazing mine for a fleeting moment, his thumb softly gliding over my knuckles. "I can't continue down this path," I murmured, my grip on the counter tightening until my fingers throbbed with pain. I felt him exhale against my forehead, his warmth enveloping the side of my head, his voice trembling, yet I remain at a loss for how to halt this moment. I didn't either. At times, I found myself resenting him for igniting that desire within me, for revealing the void I had been living in, and for effortlessly shattering the protective barrier I had constructed around my existence. At times, I loathed myself even more for allowing him to enter my life, for desiring him with such intensity. In those fleeting moments when his fingers brushed against my skin, clarity eluded me, yet I felt more vibrantly alive than I had in years. I made an effort to keep my distance. I meticulously cleaned each room in the house not once, but twice, reorganized the pantry with precision, and scrubbed the grout in the bathroom tiles until my fingers were sore. I convinced myself that the tasks at hand would suffocate the longing, burying it beneath the burdens of everyday existence. Yet, with each approach, each whisper that grazed my ear, the earth beneath me crumbled once more. I find myself at a crossroads, uncertain whether to cease my journey or simply to release the burden of self-loathing that serves no purpose. It unraveled gradually, piece by piece. It began with subtle fissures, like the way my husband began to observe me from across the dinner table. His brow knitted together, his lips forming a tight line as I averted my gaze. It was on that fateful day when my daughter stumbled upon the crumpled note nestled in the trash. One of his messy scrawls, which I hadn't torn up thoroughly enough, still had the words faintly visible along the edge. She raised it towards me, her eyes filled with bewilderment. "Who is the author of this?" she inquired. I stood still, paralyzed by the moment. My heart pounded in my chest, a relentless drumbeat that drowned out her voice. It's insignificant. I leaned in close, my voice barely above a murmur, as I seized the paper from her grasp, twisting it into a compact sphere. Yet, the doubt lingered, lurking just beneath the surface of her gaze. That evening, I lingered by the window, my gaze fixed on the street, anticipating the arrival of his car. It was clear to me that he was steering clear of my presence. Days had passed without a visit, without a text, without any more notes left behind. The house was devoid of life in his absence, the air heavy with stillness, the silence palpable. A part of me wished he would keep his distance. The other part urged him to force open the door and declare that he was indifferent to who discovered he couldn't live without me. A week later, I caught the sound of his voice in the hallway, a soft murmur as he spoke to my husband. A chill coursed through my veins. I entered the kitchen, gripping the counter's edge, my breath quick and shallow. They lingered by the front door, discussing the garage repairs and the payment he was meant to collect. He averted his gaze from me, not even once. My husband presented him with a check. His tone was courteous, yet rigid. He stated firmly, "Don't come around anymore. We will seek out another option." His jaw set in determination, his fingers gripped the folded check tightly. He cast a fleeting look beyond my husband, our eyes locking for just a moment. A sudden pang of guilt, an unnamed ache, struck me just before he turned and exited through the door. I remained silent. I was unable to. That night, I found myself wide awake, gazing at the ceiling, my arms firmly pressed against my sides. I lingered in anticipation, hoping to hear the door slowly creak open, the gentle sound of his boots gliding across the floor, and the soft whisper of my name echoing in the shadows. Yet, the house remained silent. I've experienced guilt in the past, but never to this extent. Not when it felt like solace. Not when it filled me with a sense of vitality I hadn't experienced in years.